7-year warranty.
Now, last week, Maeve O'Rourke was honoured with the Forgotten Irish Award by the Ireland Fund of Great Britain. She's a trainee barrister, and the award is for her work on behalf of women who suffered in Magdalene Laundries. And I'm delighted to say she joins us now from London. Maeve, good morning.
Morning.
And Maeve, before we get into the work you've done for the past 3 years, for those who aren't familiar with what the Magdalene Laundries were and how long they were open and the sort of people who went through them, you might just remind us.
Well, the Magdalene Laundries, a lot of people will know, actually, even in London where I'm living at the moment, from Peter Mullen's 2002 film The Magdalene Sisters. But basically there were 10 institutional laundries, residential laundries, run by 4 different religious orders of nuns. They were commercial, for-profit laundries. They operated before the Irish Free State came into existence. They started on the continent, but at the time that the other Magdalene Laundries were closing down outside of Ireland. In fact, from about 1922, they were only getting going with renewed vigour, you could say, in Ireland. And so they operated until the last one closed in Sean McDermott Street in Dublin in 1996. And they were places that would confine girls, young girls. We have met women who went in as young as 11, and women for various reasons. Those included girls who'd been sexually abused, girls who'd grown up in the care of the church and state in industrial schools, for example, or who had been born in mother and baby homes and boarded out to foster families, women who had become pregnant outside marriage and whose babies had been given up for adoption. There were state policies that if this had happened a second time, they would be confined in Magdalene Laundries. Women who were a problem within their family, maybe there was a land dispute and a woman would be sent to a Magdalene Laundry. Coming from the women themselves, the evidence is that the Magdalene Laundries were places of confinement where women were locked in, and they worked at laundry 6 days a week, up to 10 hours a day, for no pay. Washing laundry was a way of, I suppose, the idea was to wash away their sins by doing laundry for the rest of their lives. The women didn't know if they would ever get out, and we know that there are a lot of women. We know that there are a lot of women who died within the laundries. We don't know how many women ever went in. We don't know how many women ever came out. But that is.
No, I think we've lost the line to London there. We were just talking to Maeve O'Rourke there about her work done on the Magdalene Laundries. We will try and re-establish that line.
Hi, are you there?
Sorry, Maeve. Yes, I can hear you now. Sorry, I lost you there. You can hear me again, Maeve?
I can. Where did we get to?
Yes. Tell us, Maeve, and sorry for the interruption there, but how did you get involved?
Well, I got involved with Justice for Magdalene. It's a small advocacy group that has been calling for an apology and restorative justice measures for women who spent time in Magdalene Laundries. When I went to Harvard Law School after finishing my law degree at UCD, it was 2009, the time when the Ryan report had come out, and that was very much on my mind because I was interested in human rights, and in particular I was interested in women's rights. And I got reading the Ryan report and immediately realised that the Magdalene Laundries had been excluded from the remit of the Ryan Commission and the compensation scheme that had been set up for people who had suffered in industrial schools. I met Professor James Smith, who worked at Boston College, who had been working with Justice for Magdalene's and gathering evidence of state involvement in the Magdalene Laundries, and together I wrote my master's paper on the state's legal responsibility to provide restorative justice to these women because of its involvement and knowing failure to regulate and inspect the laundries. And together we then applied to the Irish Human Rights Commission in May 2010 for an inquiry, and they then provided recommendations to the government in October 2010 to immediately investigate and to provide compensation where appropriate.
And you met quite a few of the women, or you have met quite a few of them, Maeve, in the course of your work?
I have done, and so I came to London after my year in Harvard to work at a women's international human rights organisation, Equality Now, and the Irish Human Rights Commission, when they issued their recommendation, that went to the Attorney General, and nothing happened for months. And so I set about interviewing women in London who had spent time in Magdalene Laundries, and they provided testimony that I then anonymised and brought to the UN Committee Against Torture in May 2011, because something we've always said is that time is not on these women's side and something had to be done. So I sat with 5 women in their sitting rooms, listened to what they had been through in Magdalene Laundries and indeed for the rest of their lives as a result, and then brought their testimonies to the UN in Geneva.
And what struck you about them?
Well, it was all just so familiar. What struck me was the fact that they were speaking of familiar places, and yet, and that they were the age of, aunts of mine, and yet that what they were telling me amounted to slavery, servitude, forced labour, as I had learned about in my human rights courses. Their stories were horrific. They were young girls, all under 18 when they were put into the laundries. They had done nothing wrong, and they had been incarcerated, some for up to 6 years, others I have met since for up to 14 years. And they had just, their entire lives had been blighted by what they'd been through in the laundries. And so they spoke of the trauma while they were in there, of never knowing whether they would ever be able to leave. And they spoke of the abuse that they suffered, obviously, from being forced into unpaid labour, and being constantly denigrated and told that it was their fault that they were in there, and that they had done something wrong. They spoke of the conditions in there, constantly being hungry and cold, and not being able to wash, and just general abuse. And then what really struck me was the fact that it was ongoing and the effect that it had had on them for the rest of their lives. And so,
were they broken, do you think?
Well, it's hard to say that, because they've done so well. What I've learned from them is how people can survive after the most horrific experiences. But it would break anybody's soul, anybody's will, and they have had to go on and they've had to continue their lives. But it has been very difficult, and they have been, the trauma that has stayed with them in the form of, they still get nightmares and daily thoughts and flashbacks, but also then the effect of poverty, and they were never paid any wages, so they don't have pensions today. They're living in poverty, and they really have needs that are ongoing now, and they need an apology. They need to know that they were not at fault, that society was at fault, that the state and the church and society all acted together, and that they were the innocent victims of something that was done to them. And they need then to be provided with what they need to live a comfortable life from here on out.
And Maeve, did you get angry listening to their accounts and hearing the story and the past and what happened at the Magdalene Laundries?
I did. Of course, it was hard. It's hard to take it all in at first, and they would say to me, "You just couldn't possibly understand," and I agree with that. I knew that I couldn't understand, and I just thought, well, something has to be done, and what I can do is actually try and bring about an apology and restorative measures for these women. I just feel what makes me upset is the fact that we have come so far, and that I have obviously benefited from, women's rights in Ireland today, and from all the opportunities that I have. And what upsets me is the fact that these women are alive today, and why should one set of us as Irish women have one set of rights and these women not have the same? They've been through so much already, and then to forget about them and deny their rights today while the rest of us enjoy what we enjoy is so wrong.
Because what age are you, Maeve?
I'm 26.
And you've studied at Harvard. You had an opportunity to study there.
I did.
And do you think that was where imbued you with this spirit of tackling things like this? Because it's said about a lot of young people, and I don't mean to be patronising, a lot of people in their late teens and early 20s, that they don't have passion, they don't have hunger, they don't have the anger to change things.
Well, what I think it did was make me see what had happened from a different perspective. Yes, people were very critical. I kind of felt for the first time, wow, being Irish, there are some things we have to answer for. It's not all wonderful that we are such a Catholic country, the people don't see it all as, you know, only wonderful. Obviously there are great elements to what we have as a national identity, but there are also things that we have to make right and that we have to answer for. And I think just being in a class with people from all over the world and from Americans and telling them, you know, what I was working on and the details of the Magdalene Laundries abuse, it really made me sit up and think, you know, this is not right, and something has to be done about it. And
just explain exactly then what the next step is, because Martin McAleese's report is due to be published shortly.
Yes, so Martin McAleese has been chairing an independent investigation, a governmental investigation into state interaction with the laundries that was set up after the UN Committee Against Torture made a recommendation in June 2011. And that report has now gone to the government and will be published in the next 2 or 3 weeks. The women have contributed testimony to it. We have also done interviews with people who worked in the laundries, outsiders who had contact with the laundries, and we're expecting a robust report that will explain the extent of state involvement. And what we really want to see immediately after the report is published is an apology from the state on behalf of Irish society, also an apology from the church, and then that the state would do something for the women, that they would have their pensions, that they would have compensation in lieu of unpaid wages, and that they would have the services that they need: health services, social services, housing services.
And Maeve, like and if they don't get that, and if what you outlined there isn't forthcoming, will you be shouting from the rooftops? I'm just conscious you're currently a trainee barrister in London. You know, if it's not delivered, how will you react, and what will you do?
Well, as you say, I'm only 26, so this is not something that I will ever let go. But the women do not have this time to wait. Of course we will be shouting from the rooftops. The UN Committee Against Torture is very much focused on this issue. It gave a 1-year deadline when it made its recommendation in June 2011. The deadline for the government to investigate and provide reparations was June 2012, and that committee obviously knows that that deadline has passed and will be following up on that. There are many other UN committees that the government sits with, you know, every year, every 2 years, and all of those committees will be watching this issue as well. Ireland obviously just got a place on the UN Human Rights Council, and so there will be a lot of attention on this issue. It is something that by international standards amounts to very, very serious human rights abuse, and it's something that won't go away. But for reasons of compassion and decency, I think that we really need to not get swept away when Senator McAleese's report comes out and trying to see, well, who was most responsible and where the finger should really be pointed, and not forget about the women who are there today who have very real needs.
So you're not going to let this go?
I'm not going to let this go, and the group that I work with, Justice for Magdalene, is certainly not going to let this go.
What do your friends say, Maeve, who maybe aren't as passionate about it as you? Do they sort of say, do they wonder at the fact that you give so much time and thought and so much of your life is devoted to this?
I don't think so. I think that they're proud, and I think that they're interested. I obviously have met the women, and so, you know, I tell my friends in the women's own words what happened, and this is our history, and my friends are interested, and it definitely has resonance for the kind of debates we're having today around women's sexual and reproductive health rights, and, you know, it's something that definitely interests my generation.
Maeve, I'm just conscious you didn't lick this investigative zeal off a stone. Your dad is our colleague Sean O'Rourke, and your mother Caroline Murphy, a former sports producer here and of course a presenter of It Says in the Papers. Is this where the zeal came from? I mean you are your own woman obviously, but was this drilled into you?
Well, I'm definitely argumentative, and I probably
I don't know where you got that. We don't know. We could maybe carry out an investigation as to where that came from.
But I think the biggest thing that I got from my parents is a sense that, you know, I have a responsibility, given what I have been given, to give back what I can, and a sense that, you know, I've been very lucky, and if there's something that I can do to make other people's lives better, then, you know, that's something that I should do, and that will make me happy in the long run. So they've definitely instilled us with the sense of responsibility to do what we can to give back, because we've been very lucky in the opportunities that we've had.
And you also, I think, have mentioned your own school, Loreto Dalkey, as a place that helped you in developing your views and your ideas about what went on around you.
Definitely, there's a real the curriculum, I suppose, social justice curriculum in Loreto Dalkey, which was carried out mainly through the religion classes, actually. And again, this is where I would get the sense that, you know, although I'm criticising something that happened in the name of religion, I understand, and it's very useful and important, I think, in doing this campaign, to understand that good things. Obviously, I learned what I learned through the religion classes that I did in Loreto Dalkey, and I certainly learned my sense of responsibility to do what I can for others, and a sense of, you know, right and wrong from what I learned there. I participated in concerned debates when I was in 4th year, and definitely from then on was very interested in human rights issues, and yeah, it was a great place to grow up.
Maeve, what does the future hold for you now?
Well, I'm training as a barrister in 4 paper buildings in London, which is a family chambers of barristers, and I'll be focusing on family law and children's law in particular. So I'm really looking forward to that. I like the idea of being able to get my hands on cases that, you know, have an immediate, you know, you have contact with the people that you're working for, is something I really have loved about working on the Magdalene campaign. It's so interesting or it's so important even, to meet the people and to be able to argue in their own words about what has gone wrong or what they're seeking in court. And you know, something that I think, it's funny, every case I'll be doing from now on will be very important to people's lives, and I find that exciting, that I can have an impact, that I'll be able to have an impact on a daily basis.
And tell me this,
to people's lives.
Would you dip your toe into politics?
Well, that remains to be seen.
Well,
I don't know. I'm only 26, so...
You sound as if you're ready-made for it, Maeve. You've a great zeal about what you do, and a great compassion and a great sense of social justice. Can we wish you well? And congratulations again. It must have been great for you to receive that award, the Forgotten Irish Award, from the Ireland Fund of Great Britain.
It was great. The Ireland Fund just has such a long history of supporting the elderly Irish in the UK in particular, and so it really meant a lot. And I feel that we're building a movement now towards justice for these women. So it was a great night in the embassy on Tuesday, and thank you for having me.
Not at all, Maeve, and it's been a pleasure to talk to you, and we'll await the outcome of Martin McAleese's report, and I'm sure we'll hear from you then. Take care of yourself.